welcome to episode 8 of Engineering Success with our special guest, Patricia Moore. Patricia is a UK Managing Director and an Executive Board Member of Turner Townsend. She leads a team of over 2,000 experts with an annual turnover of £250 million and drives the continued growth of the UK business across real estate, infrastructure and natural resources. Patricia started her career in Scotland in 1988 as a trainee Quantity Surveyor working on a marine civils project for the Navy. She moved to London in 1994, providing cost management services to the Jubilee Line extension, followed by the Paddington Station refurbishment. Patricia joined Turner Townsend in 1999 and, having supported clients across a diverse range of projects, in 2015 was appointed Managing Director of Turner Townsend's UK infrastructure business. Patricia is a member of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors and has an MSc in Construction Law and Arbitration. She is an associate at the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators and has a diploma in Company Direction from the Institute of Directors. So hi Patricia, and welcome to Engineering Success. It's great to have you on the show today.
My pleasure.
Can we start with what first interested you in becoming a quantity surveyor, and what was the first position you had at an engineering company?
So I left school in 1985, it's a long time ago now, and I, whilst I had the qualifications to go to university, I really didn't want to be a full-time student. So I kind of took some time out trying to sort of work out what I wanted to do and, what industry perhaps interested me. I met someone who was involved in materials testing, concrete testing, and I sort of went for a job application with them, which I didn't actually get in the end, but it sort of sparked my interest in the industry. And on the back of that, then I started looking at the different role types and jobs that construction offered. I think for me, as a female at that time, there was a lot of guidance and bias towards what was traditionally female designations, female jobs. And I wanted something that I found interesting, had a balance of sort of practical and professional skills development. And I thought, once I've sort of found out about QSing, I thought that sounds good, because you can get the sort of creativity of construction, the construction process, being on site and seeing things come together, as well as some office skills and ultimately a professional qualification. And so I started as a trainee quantity surveyor with Corduroy in Glasgow, working on a major marine civils project for the MOD, for the Navy, and basically I did my whole training contract with them. So it was 6 years to do a part-time qualification. Went to Napier University and did the degree part-time. And the rest is history. So they say. Yeah. So when you first set out on your journey, did you aspire to lead a company the size of Turner Townsend, or? No, I don't think I've ever been a big career planner, to be honest. What I did set out to do was, as I said, I suppose my initial criteria was something where I could see the mix of the role and the development was right, and ultimately coming to something where I knew I would get a degree qualification at the end, but also get that vital experience as I went was a very interesting proposition for myself at the time, and I think it's interesting to see how the industry has sort of come full circle from then. So in that time, the whole of the industry was sort of closing down the traineeships, and everyone was going for the undergraduate selection. And I wrote to 100 QS practices in the West of Scotland. And about 8 of them saw me, and they were all sort of advising them, well, you need to go, you've got the qualifications, go to university. And I was saying, no, I really want to work. I don't want to be a full-time student. And in the end, 2 of them gave me a job. I chose one, and that was with Corduroy. So I never really thought from those humble beginnings that I would be an MD of a big business one day. But But what I have always striven to do, I suppose, is grow and learn and take opportunities, for that development. And I think that's a big thing that I really try and encourage our early careers people, really, the people within our business, to really think hard about, because I think it's very easy to chase the medals and the badges in terms of grade structure, but actually really the race is the prize. You get to sort of my age and it's 35 years later and you think, how did that happen? And so really you do have to enjoy the journey, and I think for me, as long as you're growing and developing and being enriched in that journey, then I think that's sound advice, really.
So who or what has been your biggest inspiration?
I don't know who my biggest inspiration is. I mean, obviously you get very inspired by your parents, don't you? Because they inspire you with all the best of the raw ingredients. If you're lucky, like I was, my parents were very different, I suppose. But my dad gave me lots of my key strengths, but my mum gave me loads of strengths as well, and very different qualities. They both inspired me to work hard. When I joined Turner Townsend, I knew that I'd joined a business where I could really feel that I was being inspired, all the time, really, by the peer group and by the leadership of the business. And that's something that's just gone from strength to strength. So, I'm very lucky now that my line manager is Vince Clancy, who's, basically, grown and developed and led the business for a long time now. And so, professionally, he's in my personal life, and for me as a human being, and my parents, but my professionally, I'd say, it's Vince.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of leaders have weekly or daily habits. Do you have any habits that you'd like to share?
I don't have any habits that I'd share on that. No, I'm not actually very habitual, really. I quite like routine. So I suppose I'm a bit of a fan of routine, but at the same time I'm a big fan of variety as well. So I don't know, I'm probably a bit of a balance between those two aspects. So I don't really have habits.
Right.
I don't have. No. I don't know. I'm not really. No, that's probably the most difficult question for you to ask me. Actually, I wouldn't say I'm habitual, really.
No, just each day as it comes.
Yeah.
So, what obstacles did you have to overcome to become the managing director of Turner Townsend UK?
Well, I suppose the obstacles of. Biggest obstacles, on the face of it, you could say, oh well, I've had 3 children, I've progressed my career, whilst being a mum and sort of juggling lots of things, and I think that's probably fairly straightforward. I think the biggest obstacle that you really overcome, I suppose, is, and I don't say that to be dismissive actually of the female thing, because it is. There's definitely, and I talk to, our girls in the business quite a lot about all of this, that it's very easy to kind of get down about all of that. What I've always said to our female cohort is embrace the diversity as something as a differentiator. I always used it to my advantage, really. It was, it's very easy to leave a good impression with a client whenever you've got an accent, you're bold, and you're the only female in the room, so it's very, very easy to leave a client with a strong impression of you. If you're one of 10 men in that meeting, it's a bit more difficult, I think, to be a standout. So you have to sort of turn the attributes in your favour, I think. But I think in terms of me personally, the biggest challenges to my progression is facing your own inadequacies. I suppose it's really facing your own developmental areas and then dealing with them. So that really is about being able to take feedback and then act on it, and deploy it, and that goes from what you need to be good at as a trainee QS, is one part of your journey, but what you need to be good at, to come up all the way through the life cycle, get to a leadership role. it is a changing landscape of skill sets and focus and, and centre of gravity really of capability. So the biggest challenge I think is, is embracing that journey and having a growth mindset about how you can grow your capability progressively as your challenge, changes around you. And I think that's the same for everybody really. So I think, there are some, sort of hard stuff that you've got to get over, like the childbearing years and coming through that. I mean, that is no mean feat. But they are transient, and things move and change in time. I think the more significant things that you really have to overcome is growing your capability and growing your skill set.
So what have you enjoyed most about your professional journey?
Oh, I think the biggest thing is, well, there's lots of things. I mean, I think we're really lucky to work in an industry. I'm very, very lucky, very blessed to have found Turner Townsend, I always say. I think the biggest thing, I suppose, is just that variety. So what I was kind of saying before was, you start your career and first of all you're just sort of learning about the world of work, what that means, and how you get up in time in the morning and get to a place, and and then you start to build the building blocks of your skill set, your core technical skill set, which is hugely important, because if you build a really strong foundation in that, then it sets you up for everything else. But as you progress through the technical skill sets, then you move more into management and dealing with clients and stakeholder management, people management, and you start to master those skill sets, and then you move through that and into the leadership agenda really, and then sort of setting business strategy and implementing that strategy and bringing people with you and engaging people and differentiating your product from the competition and building key relationships in the industry and networking effectively. So that change in skill set and the change in requirement is the journey, and even now that journey continues. So I think that's, the biggest bit that I've enjoyed, and it all comes back to, I think professional people are happiest when they're growing and learning and developing. And as long as you can satiate that, then you're happy.
So what challenges do you face on a weekly, monthly basis?
Loads. Constant challenge, but then I think that's the virtue as well, that it is challenging. I mean, what we see now outside in our external world is things are changing so quickly. I remember going to a conference a few years ago, and I heard a quote by one of the speakers there, which was, the rate of change that we're currently experiencing will never be as slow again. So and I think once you get your head around that, then you start to embrace change and understand that change is here. That's actually the only constant as we go forward. And so therefore that makes you, I think, more receptive to that change, and therefore more embracing of how you deal with it, and how you meet the challenges that it brings, and enjoying it rather than fighting it. So there are many changes, changes in terms of how our industry is shaping, changes in terms of our client base and the form of their organisations and the stresses and strains that those organisations are under. The changes in terms of our people and trying to fit those changing landscapes together, is really the art of management and leadership in the current day.
So what attributes do you need to be the MD of Turner Townsend?
I've formed my skill set over a long number of years now, and I've enjoyed building those building blocks. I do worry about the future generations, actually, whether they'll have so much time to take over all of that stuff. But I guess you have to start with, and I always really advise our younger generations really that they've got to really be very good at what you do. So the first thing is deep technical capability. So I did that through my QS degree, and I did it through a subsequent master's in construction law and arbitration, and then I was sort of thinking, should I go into dispute resolution, or should I stay in mainstream projects? And I decided to stay in projects and project delivery, and then up through sort of business management. So you have to amass a whole load of skills to be able to then sit above an even more diverse skill base that sits beneath you in terms of the diversity that sit across in the UK business. And if you don't have that, then it's very difficult, I think, in a professional services company to have that respect and for people then to effectively follow your leadership. So I think that's the first thing is, that's your real core foundation, and that takes a long time to develop. That should be the bulk of your career planning, really, that you're going to be very, very technically capable at what you do. I think whenever you progress into management and leadership, then it becomes, very, very important, I think, to have great people skills. And, the whole sort of phenomenon of emotional intelligence and everything is very well or much better understood these days, I think. But being able to have empathy and to be able to emotionally relate to people, I think, is a really fundamental core skill. And so, we are a people business. We interact with clients who are people. So it really, that people skill set actually becomes increasingly important as you progress. My sister's an educationalist, and she always says that I'm an integrated brain, which is a compliment, I think. But I guess what she means is it's a sort of balance between left brain centricity and right brain centricity, which traditionally is left brain, is the sort of core technical QS, but being good at the numbers and the logic, and then the right brain about the people and being able to sort of navigate it. And I think you do need that balance of those areas and those capabilities. And I think the great news is that it's all up for grabs in your brain, and you can really develop it if you've got the right mindset. So I'm a big believer in Carol Dweck and the growth mindset. If anyone wants to read her book, she's a leading professor at Stanford University, and she's done some phenomenal work, I think, on how we can all grow our capabilities in anything that we want to do by having the right mindset.
So what keeps you motivated?
Well, I think it is that whole learning landscape, really. I'm motivated because the landscape changes all the time. The growth of the business gives you new challenges. The growth in our client relationships and the projects that we're now doing are much, much bigger and more complex. The growth in the pipeline of projects coming down keeps you stimulated. The changes in the demographic and the skill sets, the government agenda in terms of driving productivity and efficiency in our industry. There are lots and lots of different things that are stimulus for change, and I think that change, brings that variety, brings brings the desire, I suppose, to meet those challenges and enriches the journey, so that I can keep learning and growing. So that fundamentally is my motivation, which I suppose in some ways is a pretty selfish motivation, because it is about feeling that I can make a contribution and that I don't have all the answers, and that that's a bit of a thrill. But also on the other side, I suppose there is this growing understanding, which I think I've matured in my thinking of as I've come through the business and the industry, in that I've got this sense of, as a female in the industry, I never quite really knew. I never really felt like I was the only woman in the room. Very very often my friends would say, "Are you the only woman in that? How many women are in that?" And I'd say, and I'd have to sort of think about it and count. Yeah, I suppose I am. But what I realised, I suppose, as I came up through the management structure was just how many women need to see that, and how important it is. I never really quite got the importance of the role model thing until people started to tell me about it. And now, I really make time to try and encourage our women to see their path and have the confidence, and all the sort of research shows that role modelling is a hugely significant element in being able to let people, women see their path. And so I feel that I need to do my part for that, and that's quite rewarding. I think the other big motivation for me is that as the business grows and scales, we've gone from, it was a 30 million revenue business when I joined in 1999. I'm coming up for 20 years anniversary next month.
Yeah.
We're having a party. I think as we've grown that business, which is now 650 million revenue, then with that growing up comes with it, I suppose, increased responsibility for us to contribute to the industry, to our people, to society. And so again, that's another key motivational area for me, because we Scots tend to have a big sense of community and society, and sort of fairly central to our core values, and so being able to be in a position where our business can influence more and can make a bigger contribution. So we do much more in our corporate responsibility program now than we ever did before, and I kind of lead that from the UK perspective. So that's another big area that keeps me motivated, because I see that we can make a massive difference and a big contribution now, and we're enabled to do that because we've driven a successful business. So that success brings the ability to contribute, and also brings, I suppose, an increasing expectation from society that we will contribute.
So we know it's important to develop at every level. What do you do to develop yourself?
Well, I mean, the job in itself is very self-developing, because you're always sort of reviewing what's changing and what's happening in the industry. So obviously you take a lot of various sources of that, from conferences, talking to clients, talking to our people, engaging with competitors and in peer groups. We do more and more interactions, with other consultancies now, as the landscape is changing, and the complexity of our services and our projects increases. And so therefore there's lots and lots of different stimuli, I think, for understanding, the changes that are happening, and therefore formulating and developing our plans to deal with that. So a whole range of different things, everything from professional associations like the RICS and APM publications, right through to podcasts, to the internet, the building press, the Financial Times. You have to be, I think, alive to the world around you, so that, as I say, we can continue to not just respond and react, but to try and be ahead of the change that's coming, because it takes, the bigger the business becomes, the longer it is to drive change, and the harder it is to drive change. So you have to be earlier in your thinking, earlier and earlier as you progress.
So have you had any mentors along your journey? Obviously, we discussed Vince.
I guess Vince has been my biggest mentor. But I think, I've kind of done this thing within the business of, in some of those groups that I was talking about for our women, to help them, sort of progress. And I kind of did my 10 top tips. I think there were more than 10 on it, so I failed as a QS. But one of them is, the sort of things that I've learned. Some of them are the things that I've progressively learned. And actually, when I was sort of drawing up that list, I was thinking, who taught me that? Who told me that? And I can attribute most of it to different people, actually. Either line managers or, people that I worked alongside with, in the early part of my career, some peers that I worked alongside. It just gave you snippets of things that, everything from, grab responsibility, don't wait for it. Be really good in your field, be really good at what you do, right up to how you start to try and formulate a business plan. So I think the key thing is, again, it's having that growth mindset, being receptive to learning and developing, and understanding that you can probably learn something from everyone around you. Everyone's got something to give you.
So what would your number one piece of advice be for somebody thinking about a career in engineering today?
Well, I think, we, as I said, I think, it's a great industry to choose. I think there's loads and loads of demand coming in our industry, and so therefore it makes it a fairly sound choice, from a business. In terms of them and their professional journey, I would say, as I said earlier, the race is the prize. Really think hard about your core technical field. There's lots of, obviously, subdivisions in engineering and construction.
Yeah.
There's lots of roles that you can play. So try and get something that aligns to, what excites you, and not necessarily what you feel you could achieve very quickly, but something where, that you think is going to stimulate you for the journey. And enjoy the journey, enjoy the developmental journey. Don't race and chase grades and badges. Really think hard about what makes a really good designer, or what makes a really good QS, or what makes a really good project manager, and aspire to be that role, rather than aspire to be, an associate director or a senior or a PM or and there is a real sort of culture of that now in business, where people are sort of looking for that adulation too early, or they're looking for a badge as a validation of themselves. Actually, the people who really invest in being good at what they do are the people who ultimately succeed.
Yeah. So why do you feel there's been a skills shortage in engineering?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, we are experiencing, more demand than we've had for decades. Yeah. And that is only going to get bigger. So, as I come back to the previous answer, really was, it's a sound career path choice, because the demand is going to be there and it's going to continue. The other thing, I suppose, is that we have suffered, maybe 20, 30 years ago, we used to suffer the boom bust. So we used to lose a lot of skills, deeply qualified people who used to leave in the recessionary periods and then never come back to the industry. So there's definitely layers of capability that we've lost, in the industry in the past. And I think in today's day and age, then I think there is a big issue about, attraction of the industry. That's why the work you're doing, Jamie, is really important, to raise the profile of the industry to a generation that don't necessarily see it. My eldest boy is sitting A-levels at the moment, and he came in and did some work experience, and it shows you how bad I am, because after he'd come done the work experience, he said, "Well, it's good to understand what you do at last." And I thought, you had to come in and spend a week to really understand it, because it's quite difficult to explain what a QS does, or what we even as a business do. So it's not as simple and compact to be able to explain as what people, meet in their daily lives, like a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. Everybody kind of understands those things. Yeah. But, obviously in construction it's a bit more complex and therefore difficult to, articulate really concisely so that you can sell the message. But also I just don't think they don't get the diversity of exposure to that. So we are doing, we've got a STEM programme, and we've got a schools programme actually as part of our corporate responsibility programme. We're not necessarily setting out with the primary ambition to raise awareness of our industry. That's more of a sort of collateral benefit. Yeah. The primary reason for that is to drive social mobility in our underprivileged areas of our community, a big part of our corporate responsibility programme. Yeah. But we send our people into schools, and we do different schemes with those kids, and we actually target as young as year 3 primary school. Right. And then we do a sort of secondary school programme. We do speakers for schools, career ready, mentoring, all of those things to try and raise the awareness really to our industry as well. So I think the biggest single thing we could do in the industry is just raise awareness of the phenomenal stuff that we do. And so Crossrail, for instance, I know is getting a lot of bad press at the moment, but when that comes on stream in London, I think that will be a big eureka moment for people to see the industry. When actually you start to ride on that newly constructed railway that has just been built under all of the existing buildings in London, and people start to understand the feat of engineering that it is. then I think you will get those sort of wow factor points, I suppose, that some of the big real estate projects get. When the Shard came on stream, that was a big wow moment, wasn't it? And it went through all the schools, and so you kind of need those iconic projects, I think, to sort of raise the awareness. I do think that the professional bodies are way behind the times in terms of how they present the industry, and I kind of always say every time I go to the ICE or the RICS that we should have suspended structures over the Thames to attract people, rather than show them what's achievable in engineering, rather than men with chains and looking a little Lord Mayor. I always say, if I brought my son in here, he'd say, I'm not going to do this, I'm not doing whatever this is, I'm not doing it. So we do have to think, I think, of ways that we can just drive attraction, and obviously raising awareness is a big part of that.
Because that's my next question. Do you feel that engineering can promote itself better? I
mean, I think the it's doing more of what we're already doing. One of the interesting things is we set up a little working group within the business. Some of our young up and coming stars got together, and we asked them that question. What's the biggest challenge to the skills gap? And their analysis was, number one, above everything else, it was attraction. And so therefore, you can do loads of other things, but actually attraction's the big win. And they highlighted the, one of the military campaigns when they just did the advertising on TV, and they just changed the perception, almost overnight with an advert, in the telly. So I just think, but the problem we suffer, of course, in the industry is the fragmentation. There is no one association, there's 15 associations, 20, 25, 30, and there's thousands and thousands of, suppliers to construction, and therefore we don't really ever speak with one voice. And that kind of conspires against us sometimes, I think, doing, taking that ownership and doing the right thing for the industry overall.
So how do you see engineering changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Everything's changing.
Always.
Well, I'd really do. I mean, everything is changing. I think if you look at how much consolidation's happened in professional services, all of the big firms have eaten each other up, to become mega firms. We're pretty unique that we've survived in this space that we're in, and we set out with a very determined strategy to be, one of one in our space, and we've been lucky that that's really worked well for us. But that's changing. You look at what's happening in the supplier market. The tier ones are under extreme pressure. You used to look at the Carillion case, and there are others that are very fractious. It starts to question how long can the current model sustain itself whenever those contracting organisations are only making 1.5% margin. That's what stops us from driving the progress that we really need in the industry and driving further change. You look at how we're going to construct now and in the future. There's lots of the catalyst for change really is being driven now by government, at the highest level, from the industrial strategy to change how we construct and how we bring and modernise construction methods, given that it hasn't changed in decades really. So everything from design for manufacture to driving digital to driving sustainability and the carbon agenda, all of those things I think will absolutely reformulate how we construct and who constructs. Hand in hand with that goes how we will be rewarded. So what are the commercial models, and how do we transition from being an organisation or a profession that effectively sells people's time to really selling solutions. So all of those things all kind of wrap up to what is the changing dynamic of the industry. And then the final thing, I suppose, is obviously the workplace and how the workplace is going to change, the demographic of the workplace, people's desires as to how they work. We hear of some of the leading businesses now going to 4-day weeks, and their productivity goes way up from having done it. So I think there's very interesting things happening in terms of trying to drive agility of working and methods of working that is going to be really interesting for the future.
Yeah.
So I think everything's going to change, and probably it is in that 5 to 10 to 15 year horizon that it is really, but that we're going to really see the acceleration of that.
Yeah. So, final question: having accomplished so much, what does the future hold for you?
Well, I'm still learning. I still feel as though I've got. In fact, one of my when I got promoted to UK MD, I also got promoted to the executive board, and people don't quite understand the relevance of that, I suppose. But that for me was a double promotion. So obviously I got to look after the top level of the business.
Yeah.
And what that's exposed me to is the global operation. So we are a truly global business.
Yeah.
The UK is around about half of the global empire, if you like. And I don't really know anything about running a business in Australia or running a business in Oman or how you trade in France or so I'm on a whole new learning curve really from my executive board position. So I kind of tell everyone, and they quite like this, that I'm the apprentice. I'm the apprentice on the executive board, but I guess I'm going to be there for a while, so I'm taking it easy and I'm trying to be really good at what I do. I think on the bigger landscape, we've got big ambitions as a company to really, having built this really successful business that delivers double-digit growth year on year, it's grown through the recessionary periods, that's growing up and becoming, a big contributor to society and the industry, that we really want to take our business to being a great business, a really, truly great business that's admired in the industry.
Yeah.
And so that's the next part of our journey, and that excites me, and that's my journey in the future.
Yeah.
So I'm not going anywhere yet. Continuing on and learning and developing as I go.
Yeah.
And embracing the challenge.
Right. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
So thanks very much for your time, Patricia.
Thank you.
Great to have you on the show.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Join us next time on Engineering Success for more insights from successful and inspirational leaders within the engineering and construction industries. I would love you to subscribe to the podcast and please leave a rating and review. Have an amazing week and see you next time on Engineering Success.